A pregnant German shepherd was found hanging on barbed wire in a field, but a baby's reaction to seeing her moved even the rescuers to tears. Watch until the end. This gesture will touch your heart. If stories like this move you, subscribe and hit that bell. The vast Montana sky hung gray and heavy that morning over Willow Creek Ranch. The rustling of tall prairie grass and the occasional clink of old fence wire were the only sounds betraying the constant wind. Jason Miller, a weathered ranch hand who had spent most of his 40 years working this land, was accustomed to the sound of his own boots on the packed earth. But today, something different caught his ear, a sharp, pained whimper carried on the breeze. Jason paused, tilting his head to listen more carefully. There it was again, a sound of distress that made the hair on his neck stand up. He followed. The sound, his pace quickening as he approached the property's northern boundary, where an old barbed wire fence separated the ranch from public land. What he found made his stomach turn. A German shepherd, her belly swollen with pregnancy, was caught in the cruel metal barbs. The dog's flanks were pierced in multiple places, her fur matted with blood. Her eyes, once likely bright and alert, were now clouded with pain. Her legs trembled with the effort of keeping herself from sinking further into the wire's grip. "Jesus Christ," Jason muttered, immediately reaching for his phone. His calloused fingers fumbled with the screen as he dialed Carly, the office manager, back. "At the ranch house. Carly, I need help out by the north fence line," he said urgently. "Got a dog caught in the wire. She's pregnant and in real bad shape. Call that animal rescue group from town, will you? Tell them it's an emergency." After hanging up, Jason knelt beside the trapped animal. "Hey there, girl," he said softly. "Help's coming. Just hang on." The dog's eyes fixed on him, not with fear, but with a strange, resigned trust that made Jason's chest tighten. She didn't growl or snap, just watched him with that penetrating gaze. Jason gently stroked the animal's head, the only part of her he could safely touch without causing more pain. Within 30 minutes, a white SUV with Big Sky Animal Rescue emblazoned on its side pulled up on the dirt road nearby. Two women jumped out, carrying medical kits and a folding stretcher. "Over here!" Jason called, waving them toward the fence. Sarah Collins, the lead veterinarian for the rescue organization, assessed the situation quickly. Her assistant, Megan, began unpacking supplies. "She's been here a while," Sarah said grimly. "These wounds show signs of early infection, and she's far along in her pregnancy." As they prepared to free the dog, another vehicle pulled up, a blue compact car that seemed out of place against the rugged landscape. A young woman stepped out, cradling a small child. "I'm so sorry to intrude," she called out, approaching cautiously. "I gave Megan a ride when her car wouldn't start." "I hope that's okay," Sarah nodded without looking up from her work. "Thanks, Emily. Just keep back a bit. This might get complicated." Emily Thompson, a kindergarten teacher new to the area, stood at a respectful distance. Her son Noah, just 18 months old, peered curiously from her arms, his wide blue eyes taking in the scene. "Will the doggy be okay?" Emily asked softly. "We're going to do everything we can," Sarah replied, her tone professional but kind. "Jason, I need your help. When I cut the wire, we need to lift her very carefully." The delicate operation began. Sarah used specialized wire cutters to free the dog strand by strand, while Jason supported the animal's weight to prevent further injury. The dog remained eerily quiet throughout, only an occasional whimper escaping when a particularly painful barb was removed. Finally, after 20 tense minutes, they managed to free her completely. With infinite care, they transferred her onto the stretcher and covered her with a thick thermal blanket. "She's lost blood, and she's in shock," Sarah explained, as they carried the stretcher toward the vehicle. "We need to get her to the clinic right away." What happened next would later be described by everyone present as something that defied explanation. As the adults focused on loading the stretcher, little Noah squirmed in his mother's arms. Emily, momentarily distracted by something Sarah was saying, loosened her grip. In that brief moment, Noah slid down and toddled toward the injured dog before anyone could stop him. "Noah, no!" Emily cried out, lunging forward. But before she could reach him, Noah had already approached the stretcher. The adults froze, afraid that any sudden movement might startle the injured animal into a defensive reaction. Instead of growling or showing any aggression, the German Shepherd remained, perfectly still as the toddler came near. Noah, with the innocent fearlessness of a child, gently placed his small hand on the dog's head. Then, in a gesture that would later be captured in a photo that touched hearts across the country, he leaned forward and rested his forehead against the dog's bloody muzzle. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The dog's eyes, which had been dull with pain, seemed to clear slightly. She raised her head just enough to meet the child's gaze. No one present would ever forget the look that passed between them, a recognition, an understanding that transcended words. "I've never seen anything like it," Jason would later tell reporters. "That dog was suffering something fierce, but when that little boy touched her, something changed. It was like they knew each other." Sarah was the first to recover from the astonishing moment. "Emily, please," she whispered, not wanting to break the spell but concerned for both child and animal. Emily gently retrieved Noah, who came willingly but kept his eyes on the dog. As Sarah and Megan finished securing the stretcher in the vehicle, Emily made a spontaneous decision. "Can we follow you to the clinic?" she asked. I think she responded to Noah. Sarah hesitated only briefly before nodding. "That might not be a bad idea. Sometimes animals in trauma respond to children differently than adults. Less threatening, perhaps." As the small convoy prepared to leave, Jason offered to spread the word about the rescued dog in case someone was looking for her. "I don't think she's a stray," he noted. "Her coat was in good condition before this, and she's wearing a worn collar, though no tags." Sarah nodded grimly. Whatever happened here wasn't an accident. Those wounds, she didn't just run into that fence. The implication hung heavily in the air. Someone had either deliberately harmed this animal or, at minimum, abandoned her in a desperate situation. "I'll ask around," Jason promised, "though folks around here who do something like this don't usually advertise it." As they drove away, with Emily following in her car, no one could have predicted how this chance encounter would ultimately change all their lives. The German Shepherd, whom Sarah had already mentally named Shadow for her dark coat, had unknowingly found her way to the very people who would fight for her future. And little Noah, securely fastened in his car seat behind his mother, babbled, happily repeatedly pointing in the direction of the rescue vehicle ahead and saying one of the few words in his limited vocabulary, "Dog, dog." Emily glanced at her son in the rearview mirror, a strange feeling settling in her chest. "Yes, Noah, that's a very special dog." She had no idea just how special that connection would prove to be. The Big Sky Animal Rescue Clinic sat on the outskirts of Riverdale, a small Montana town where everyone knew everyone else's business. By sunset, news of the pregnant German Shepherd's rescue had already spread through local social media groups and the town's unofficial information network, the Riverdale Diner. Inside the clinic's surgery room, Dr. Sarah Collins worked methodically to clean and suture Shadow's wounds. The dog's vital signs had stabilized, but her condition remained serious. "She's a fighter," Sarah told Megan, who assisted with the procedure. "Most dogs would have gone into shock much earlier with injuries like these." In the small waiting area, Emily sat with Noah on her lap, the boy's eyes heavy with sleep after the day's excitement. She had called the kindergarten, where she taught, to explain her absence. grateful that her colleague had covered her afternoon class without complaint. "Mrs. Thompson?" Sarah emerged from the back room, removing her surgical mask. Her expression was cautiously optimistic. "Shadow's stable. We've treated her wounds and started her on antibiotics." "Shadow?" Emily asked. "That's what we're calling her for now," Sarah explained with a small smile. "Seemed fitting somehow. But there's something else you should know. The ultrasound confirmed she's carrying puppies, at least 3, possibly 4. They appear to be about a week from full term." Emily nodded, absently stroking Noah's hair. As he dozed against her shoulder, "Will they be okay?" "It's touch and go," Sarah admitted. "The trauma and blood loss put them at risk. The next 48 hours will be critical." Sarah hesitated before continuing. "There's something else. Shadow seems distressed when we separate her from the waiting area. Her heart rate elevates and she becomes agitated. I know this sounds unprofessional, but I think it might be because of Noah." Emily looked down at her sleeping son, remembering the inexplicable moment at the rescue site. "What are you suggesting? Would it be possible for you to bring Noah by tomorrow, just for a short visit? It might help calm her, which would improve her chances and the puppies." Under normal circumstances, Emily might have politely declined. As a single mother balancing teaching and parenting, she carefully guarded what little free time she had. But something about this situation, the wounded animal, her son's unusual response, tugged at her. "We'll come," she found herself saying, "after school tomorrow." That night, as Emily tucked Noah into his bed in their modest rental house, she couldn't shake the image of the injured dog's eyes meeting her son's. There had been something there, some communication beyond words that even she, watching from the outside, had felt. Back at the clinic, Sarah made her final rounds before leaving for the night. In the recovery kennel, Shadow lay on a thick padded bed, an IV line providing fluids and medication. Though heavily sedated, the dog's eyes followed Sarah's movements alertly. "You're something special, aren't you?" Sarah murmured, gently checking the bandages. "Don't worry, your little friend is coming back tomorrow." As if understanding, Shadow's tail thumped once against the bedding. The next afternoon, Emily arrived with Noah shortly after 4 o'clock. Sarah met them at the reception area. "She had a restless night," Sarah explained as she led them to the recovery area, "but her vitals have improved since this morning." When they entered the room, Shadow's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Despite her weakened state, the dog's head lifted, her eyes fixed on Noah with an intensity that made Sarah draw in a sharp breath. Noah, for his part, broke into a delighted smile. "Dog!" he exclaimed, reaching toward the kennel. Under Sarah's careful supervision, Emily brought Noah closer. Shadow's tail began to wag, weakly at first, then with increasing vigor. "I've never seen anything quite like this," Sarah admitted, watching as Noah reached through the kennel bars to gently pat Shadow's nose. "It's almost as if... They know each other," Emily finished quietly. What happened next established a pattern that would continue for days. With Noah nearby, Shadow's vital signs improved dramatically. Her heart rate normalized, her breathing deepened, and she even accepted food from Sarah's hand, something she had refused earlier. "It's remarkable," Sarah told Emily as they watched Noah sitting on a stool beside the kennel, babbling happily to Shadow. "I've read about therapy animals helping humans, but this seems to be working in reverse." By the third day, Sarah had moved Shadow to a larger enclosure where Noah could sit beside her under supervision. The German Shepherd's recovery was progressing at a rate that surprised even the most experienced staff members. "The puppy's heartbeats are stronger too," Sarah shared with Emily during one visit. "I think we might avoid an emergency C-section after all." As days turned into a week, Emily found herself rearranging her schedule to bring Noah to the clinic each afternoon. She graded papers in the waiting room while her son spent time with Shadow. The staff had come to expect them, always greeting Noah with smiles and occasionally sneaking him animal-shaped cookies. It was during the second week that the first complication arose. Emily and Noah arrived at the clinic to find Sarah in a state of controlled urgency. "Shadow's going into labor," she explained briskly. "Earlier than I'd hoped, but not unexpectedly given the trauma." Emily moved to leave, not wanting to intrude on the medical situation, but Sarah caught her arm. "Actually, I'd like you both to stay, if that's possible. Shadow seems calmer when Noah is nearby, and she'll need all the calm she can get right now." What followed was a tense afternoon. Emily kept Noah occupied in a corner of the examination room, while Sarah and her team monitored Shadow's labor. Progress was slow, and by evening, Sarah's expression had grown increasingly concerned. "The first puppy is malpositioned," she explained during a brief break, "and Shadow's too exhausted to push effectively. We need to perform a C-section." As they prepared for surgery, Shadow became increasingly distressed, her eyes searching the room until they found Noah. Emily, despite her better judgment, brought her son closer one last time before the procedure. "It's okay, sweet girl," she whispered to the dog. "You're going to be fine." Noah, with childish intuition, placed his small hand on Shadow's head and said in his limited vocabulary, "Good dog." The surgical team worked efficiently, and within an hour, Sarah emerged from the operating room with news. "3 puppies," she announced, her expression a mixture of relief and concern. 2 males and a female. The boys are doing well, but the little girl, she's struggling, underweight and having trouble breathing." Emily, who had been reading Noah a story to keep him occupied, felt an unexpected pang of concern. "What can be done?" "We've got her in an incubator with oxygen support," Sarah explained. "The next few hours will tell. Shadow is recovering well, though. She's already asking for her babies." The clinic staff had set up a whelping box near Shadow's recovery area, where the 2 stronger puppies nestled against their mother. The third, smallest puppy remained in the incubator nearby, a tiny creature fighting for life. That evening, when Emily prepared to take a tired Noah home, the boy resisted for the first time. He pointed insistently toward the recovery room, repeating, "Dog, dog," with increasing distress. "He can come say goodnight," Sarah suggested, leading them back to where Shadow lay with her puppies. Noah toddled immediately to the whelping box, but instead of focusing on Shadow or the 2 larger puppies, he moved directly to the incubator, holding the struggling female. He pressed his hand against the clear plastic, a gesture so deliberate it seemed impossible for a child his age. In that moment, something shifted in the room. The tiny puppy, as if sensing the child's presence, turned her head toward Noah's, and her previously labored breathing seemed to ease slightly. "Well, I'll be," Sarah murmured, watching the monitors. Her oxygen levels just improved. Emily glanced between her son and the fragile puppy, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Is that normal?" Sarah shook her head slowly. "In medical terms, not at all. But I'm beginning to think there's nothing normal about any of this." As they finally prepared to leave, Emily found herself asking a question she hadn't planned. "Does she have a name, the little puppy?" Sarah smiled tiredly. "The staff have been calling her Little One." Seemed appropriate, given her size. That night, as Emily tucked Noah into bed, he said "Litto" several times, his approximation of Little One, before finally drifting to sleep. Emily sat beside his bed long after, wondering about the strange series of events that had drawn them into this unexpected drama. Her phone chimed with a text message from Sarah, "Little One holding steady. Thought you'd want to know." Emily typed back a reply of thanks, then added, "We'll be back tomorrow." She realized with a mixture of surprise and certainty that she meant it. Somehow, in the space of 2 weeks, a wounded German shepherd and her puppies had become important to her. To them both. What Emily couldn't know was that across town, in a rundown farmhouse on the outskirts of Riverdale, a man named Frank Dawson was scrolling through local social media posts, his expression darkening as he recognized the distinctive markings of the German shepherd being celebrated as the miracle mom of Riverdale. "Well, well," he muttered, reaching for his phone. "Looks like my property's been found." Days at the Big Sky Animal Rescue Clinic fell into a rhythm for Emily and Noah. Afternoons were spent in the recovery room where Shadow and her puppies were thriving, except for Little One, who continued to struggle despite the best veterinary care. "Her development is delayed compared to her brothers," Sarah explained to Emily on the 10th day after the birth. They stood watching as Noah sat cross-legged beside the whelping box, Shadow's head resting contentedly on his lap. The two healthy puppies, now with eyes open and growing more active by the day, tumbled over each other nearby. Little One remained separate in her specially modified incubator. Although she was now breathing unassisted, she was noticeably smaller than her siblings, her movements less coordinated. "She may have neurological issues," Sarah continued, her voice low. "It's not uncommon with trauma during pregnancy. The question will be quality of life." Emily watched as Noah, apparently bored with the sleeping Shadow, toddled over to Little One's enclosure. As had become his habit, he pressed his hand against the clear wall, his small face serious with concentration. "He really connects with her, doesn't he?" Sarah observed. Emily nodded. "He asks for Litto first thing every morning now." The bond between Noah and the struggling puppy had become a topic of fascination among the clinic staff. Against medical expectations, Little One seemed to rally whenever Noah was present. Her vital signs would strengthen, and she would make more determined efforts to move. "I've been thinking," Sarah said slowly, as if testing out an idea she wasn't entirely comfortable with. "There's a relatively new field of study involving the healing effects of human-animal bonds, particularly with infants and young children. Some promising research suggests that physical proximity might accelerate healing in both humans and animals." Emily raised an eyebrow. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "A trial," Sarah replied. "With your permission, I'd like to allow Noah more direct contact with Little One, under strict supervision, of course." Emily hesitated. Her protective maternal instincts warred with the undeniable evidence before her. Her son had formed a connection with these animals that seemed to transcend ordinary explanation. "Let me think about it," she finally answered. That evening, as Emily prepared dinner in their small kitchen, her phone rang. The caller ID showed Riverdale Elementary, where she taught kindergarten. "Emily, it's Principal Matthews. Do you have a moment?" 20 minutes later, Emily sat at her kitchen table, Noah happily playing with blocks on the floor nearby, her mind reeling. The school was facing budget cuts, and as the newest teacher, her position was being reduced to part-time for the coming semester. "It's temporary, we hope," Principal Matthews had assured her. "But I wanted to give you as much notice as possible." The implications were immediately clear. As a single mother, Emily had carefully budgeted her full-time salary to cover rent, childcare, and living expenses. A part-time position would throw her financial stability into chaos. She glanced at Noah, blissfully unaware of the adult concerns now weighing on her shoulders. Her thoughts turned unexpectedly to Shadow and her puppies, especially struggling Little One. The daily visits to the clinic had become important to Noah. How would she explain stopping them? After Noah was asleep, Emily called Sarah. "About that trial you mentioned," she said without preamble. "I've been thinking, if it could help Little One, I'm willing to try." The next afternoon, under Sarah's careful supervision, Little One was removed from her incubator for the first time. The tiny puppy was placed on a warming pad in a secure examination area, and Noah was allowed to sit beside her. What happened next would later be described by Sarah in professional journals as unprecedented interspecies bonding with therapeutic outcomes. The technical language failed to capture the simple magic of the moment. Noah, with a gentleness remarkable for a child his age, softly stroked little one's back. The puppy, previously lethargic, responded with immediate increased alertness. She lifted her head, made eye contact with Noah, and to everyone's astonishment, attempted to crawl toward him. "This is her first voluntary locomotion," Sarah whispered, documenting the interaction with her phone camera. The puppy therapy sessions, as the clinic staff began calling them, continued daily. Little one's progress, while still behind her siblings, accelerated remarkably. Within a week, she was making recognizable attempts to bark and was crawling effectively, if somewhat clumsily. "She's going to need ongoing care," Sarah told Emily after one particularly successful session. "But I'm increasingly optimistic about her prognosis." The question of what would happen to Shadow and her puppies once they were fully recovered had been hovering unspoken between them. Now Sarah broached it directly. "We've been receiving adoption inquiries," she explained. "Several families are interested in the two stronger puppies. But Shadow and Little One present more challenges." Emily felt an unexpected tightness in her chest. The idea of Noah being separated from the animals had become increasingly difficult to imagine. "What kind of challenges?" she asked. "Shadow has developed clear attachment to Noah and by extension to you," Sarah explained. "Placing her with another family might trigger separation anxiety or regression, and Little One will need specialized care for months, possibly years." Emily took a deep breath. What if I took them? "Temporarily," she added hastily, "as a foster situation until more permanent arrangements can be made." The words had emerged almost without conscious thought, yet as soon as she spoke them, Emily knew they felt right. Sarah's expression shifted from surprise to something like relief. "You do that? With everything else you've got going on?" Emily hadn't shared her employment concerns with Sarah, but the financial reality remained a stark obstacle. Still, something stronger than practical consideration was guiding her now. "I think it might be good for Noah," she said simply, "and for them." The logistics were arranged quickly. Emily's small rental house had a fenced backyard, and Sarah helped her set up appropriate accommodations for a mother dog and puppies. The clinic would continue to provide veterinary care and special dietary support for Little One. The day Emily brought Shadow and her puppies home marked a turning point. Noah's excitement was boundless as he showed the dogs around their new temporary home, chattering in his limited vocabulary. Shadow settled in with remarkable ease, as if she understood. This arrangement was meant to be. The two stronger puppies, whom Noah had dubbed Big and Fast for their most obvious characteristics, explored their new surroundings with enthusiastic energy. Little One, still fragile but improving daily, seemed most at home in Noah's small bedroom, where Emily had set up a special padded bed. The sight of her son falling, asleep each night with the small puppy curled beside his bed, brought unexpected tears to Emily's eyes. For 2 weeks, their unusual household found its rhythm. Emily juggled her teaching duties, now shadowed by the knowledge of coming reductions. With caring for Noah and their canine guests, Shadow proved to be exceptionally well-behaved, quickly learning house rules and even helping to corral her more rambunctious offspring. It was during this period of domestic tranquility that the first ripples of trouble appeared. Sarah called Emily one evening after Noah had gone to bed. "I've received an inquiry about Shadow," she said, her tone carefully neutral. "Someone claiming to be her owner." Emily felt a chill. After all this time? It's been nearly a month since she was found. "He says he was away and just discovered she was missing," Sarah explained. He's provided a description that matches her markings, including a distinctive white patch on her chest that wasn't mentioned in any of our social media posts. "Who is he?" Emily asked, fingers tightening around her phone. "A man named Frank Dawson. He has a property about 15 miles outside town, claims Shadow, or Stella as he calls her, is a valuable guard dog that he uses for his livestock operation." Emily glanced toward Noah's room, where Shadow was currently curled, on the floor beside his bed, her now traditional sleeping spot. "What does this mean?" "Nothing immediate," Sarah assured her. "I've explained that there's an ongoing investigation into the circumstances in which she was found. The sheriff's department is involved because of the nature of her injuries." After hanging up, Emily stood in her dark kitchen, suddenly afraid. The animals had become part of their lives so quickly, so completely, that the thought of losing them, especially to someone who might have been responsible for Shadow's terrible injuries, was unbearable. The next morning, Emily called in sick to work for the first time in her teaching career. Instead of heading to school, she bundled Noah and the dogs into her car and drove to the clinic for an urgent meeting with Sarah. "I don't think it was an accident," Sarah explained when they were seated in her private office. "The pattern of Shadow's injuries suggests deliberate harm. The barbed wire didn't just catch her, she was thrown or pushed into it." Emily shuddered. Noah was in the adjacent playroom, happily supervised by Megan while he played with little one. "Does this Dawson person have any proof of ownership?" she asked. "None, beyond his description and claim," Sarah replied. "No registration papers, no vet records, says he keeps his animals off the books." "Then how can he claim her?" Sarah's expression was grim. "In Montana, animals are still legally considered property. Without clear evidence of abuse that would trigger animal welfare laws, he could potentially have a claim. But after what he did to her, you can't seriously be considering—" "Of course not," Sarah interrupted firmly. "That's why I've already contacted Paws and Justice. Paws and Justice, a non-profit legal advocacy group that specializes in animal welfare cases. They've agreed to take Shadow's case pro bono. We have a virtual meeting with their lawyer this afternoon." Relief washed over Emily, followed quickly by determination. "What can I do to help?" "Document everything," Sarah advised. "Every interaction. Between Shadow and Noah, every milestone with little one, and—" She hesitated. "You might want to consider making your fostering arrangement more permanent." "You mean adoption?" Emily's heart raced at the thought. "It would strengthen our case if Shadow had a stable, loving home already established," Sarah explained, "especially one where she's clearly bonded with a child." The camera on Sarah's computer blinked on at precisely 2 p.m., revealing a professional-looking woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes. "Linda Hawkins, Paws and Justice legal team," she introduced herself briskly. "Dr. Collins has briefed me on the basics, but I'd like to hear directly from you, Ms. Thompson, about your experience with Shadow and her puppies." For the next hour, Emily described everything, from the dramatic rescue to the extraordinary bond between Noah and both Shadow and Little One, to the current fostering arrangement. Linda listened attentively, occasionally taking notes. "And you would be willing to adopt them permanently?" she asked finally. Emily didn't hesitate. "Yes, all 4 of them." Linda's expression softened slightly. "That's commendable, but I should warn you, these cases can get complicated and sometimes ugly. Mr. Dawson has already contacted our office directly, threatening legal action if his property isn't returned immediately." "What are our chances?" Sarah asked. "Honestly, it depends on the evidence," Linda replied. "If we can prove mistreatment, his claim becomes invalid, but we need more than suspicions." As the meeting concluded, Linda's parting advice was direct. "Keep Shadow and her puppies close. Document everything. And be prepared, Mr. Dawson doesn't strike me as someone who gives up easily. That evening, as Emily watched Noah playing in the backyard with the puppies under Shadow's watchful eye, she felt a fierce protectiveness she hadn't experienced since Noah was born. These animals had become family, and she would fight for family. The morning that Frank Dawson appeared at Emily's front door was unseasonably cold for late spring in Montana. Emily had just finished helping Noah into his breakfast chair when the sharp, insistent knocking startled them both. Shadow, who had been dozing near Noah's feet, immediately rose to full alert, her ears forward and a low growl building in her throat. Through the peephole, Emily saw a weathered man in his 50s, wearing a worn denim jacket and a permanent-looking scowl. Without opening the door, she called out, "Can I help you?" "You've got my dog," came the gruff reply. "Name's Frank Dawson. Heard you're the one keeping Stella." Emily's heart raced as she pulled out her phone and quickly texted Sarah. "Dawson at my house. What do I do?" Shadow's growling had intensified, and Emily noticed with alarm that the normally friendly dog had positioned herself between Noah and the door, her posture rigid and defensive. "Mr. Dawson," Emily said through the door, fighting to keep her voice steady, "I think you should contact Paws and Justice. They're handling Shadow's case." "Shadow?" He spat the word. "Her name's Stella, and I didn't give nobody permission to rename my property." "Open this door, lady. I just want what's mine." "Please leave," Emily replied firmly, "or I'll call the sheriff." There was a moment of tense silence before Dawson responded, his voice now threateningly soft. "This ain't over. That dog is registered. Breeding stock worth good money. You think some fancy city lawyers are gonna stop me? I got rights." After a few more seconds, Emily heard heavy footsteps retreating, followed by the sound of a truck engine starting. She sagged against the wall in relief, only to jump when her phone rang. "Emily, it's Linda Hawkins. Sarah just called me. Are you and Noah okay?" "We're fine," Emily assured her, though her shaking hands belied her words. "He left when I mentioned calling the sheriff." "Good. I'm filing for an emergency protective order today. In the meantime, I've asked Sarah to come pick up you and Noah and the dogs. I don't think you should stay there alone right now." Within an hour, Emily had packed essential supplies for herself, Noah, and the dogs. Sarah arrived with Megan and a clinic transport van, and they quickly loaded everyone inside. "You can stay at my place," Sarah offered as they drove away from Emily's house. "I've got plenty of room, and it's on a private road with a security gate." The unplanned relocation created a strange bubble of time outside normal life. Emily called the school to request emergency personal days, grateful that the semester was almost over. Noah, adaptable as only young children can be, treated the whole experience as an adventure, especially with all his canine friends accompanying them. Sarah's home, a spacious log cabin set back in the pines about 20 minutes from town, became their temporary sanctuary. The two women quickly established routines for caring for Noah and the dogs, while Linda Hawkins worked tirelessly on their legal strategy. "We've secured a temporary restraining order against Dawson," Linda reported during one of their daily conference calls. "He can't approach you, Noah, or the animals until the hearing next week, but honestly, I'm concerned about what happens at that hearing." "Why?" Emily asked, pacing in Sarah's kitchen, while the veterinarian supervised Noah and the puppies in the living room. "We've been investigating Dawson," Linda explained. "And while his reputation is concerning, multiple complaints from neighbors about animal noise and neglect, we don't have concrete evidence of abuse. He's careful to stay just on the right side of the law, and Montana statutes still favor property rights in these cases." Emily felt her throat tighten. "So you're saying he might win?" "I'm saying we need to strengthen our case," Linda corrected. "The bond between Shadow and Noah is our strongest argument. We need to document it thoroughly, get expert opinions on the psychological impact separation would have on both of them." The next few days were a flurry of activity. Sarah arranged for a renowned animal behaviorist to evaluate Shadow's interactions with Noah. Emily contacted Noah's pediatrician, who agreed to provide a statement about the positive developments she'd observed in Noah's language and emotional regulation since the animals had entered his life. Meanwhile, little one continued to make progress that defied medical expectations. Though still smaller than her siblings, she was now mobile enough to follow Noah around Sarah's cabin, her slightly wobbly gait improving daily. "If I hadn't seen it myself, I wouldn't believe it," Dr. Marcus Whitfield, the visiting animal behaviorist, remarked as he observed Noah and little one playing together on the cabin floor. "This level of interspecies bonding is extraordinary, especially with a developmentally challenged puppy." Shadow lay nearby, her watchful gaze alternating between her puppies and the cabin door, as if constantly on guard against potential threats. "And the mother's protective behavior is equally remarkable," Dr. Whitfield continued, making notes. "She's not just bonded with the child, she's assumed a guardian role. Separating them now could cause severe psychological trauma to both the animals and the child." His formal assessment, delivered the day before the hearing, provided the kind of expert testimony Linda had been hoping for, but Emily still felt a knot of anxiety that wouldn't dissolve. The night before the hearing, after Noah had fallen asleep with little one curled beside his bed and the other puppies nestled, with Shadow in the corner, Emily sat with Sarah on the cabin's porch, both women nursing mugs of tea. "What if it's not enough?" Emily asked softly, the question that had been haunting her finally spoken aloud. Sarah didn't offer false reassurances. "Then we appeal. We fight. We don't give up." Emily nodded, watching the stars emerge in the clear Montana sky. "I never expected any of this, you know. A month ago, my biggest concern was planning the end-of-year party for my kindergarten class." "Life has a way of surprising us," Sarah replied. "Sometimes painfully, sometimes wonderfully. I'm being reduced to part-time next semester," Emily admitted, the first time she'd spoken the words aloud to Sarah. "Budget cuts. I was trying to figure out how to make ends meet when all this happened." Sarah's expression shifted to one of concern. "Emily, why didn't you say something? Taking on 4 dogs when your financial situation is precarious is exactly what I need to do," Emily finished firmly. "Noah needs them. They need us. The money, I'll figure something out." The hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the Riverdale County Courthouse, an imposing stone building that dated back to Montana's territorial days. Linda had advised Emily to leave Noah with Sarah at the clinic, concerned about exposing the child to potentially distressing proceedings. "The judge needs to see Shadow's reaction to Dawson," Linda explained, as they prepared in a small conference room. "That's why we persuaded the court to allow her presence today." Shadow sat calmly beside Emily, wearing a special service animal vest that Linda had procured for the occasion. The German Shepherd's demeanor was remarkably composed for an environment that would stress most dogs, her focus remaining steadfastly on Emily. "Remember," Linda advised, "let me do most of the talking. If Judge Peterson asks you questions directly, be honest but concise. Focus on the bond between Shadow and Noah and the progress little one has made under your care." When they entered the courtroom, Emily immediately spotted Frank Dawson sitting with an older man in an ill-fitting suit, presumably his lawyer. Dawson's gaze locked onto Shadow, his expression unreadable. The effect on Shadow was immediate and damning. The previously calm dog stiffened, her ears flattening against her head. She pressed against Emily's leg, trembling slightly. "Your Honor," Linda began once the preliminary introductions were complete. "The animal's reaction speaks volumes. This is not the response of a dog seeing her beloved owner after a long absence." Dawson's attorney, a Mr. Hargrove, countered with arguments about property rights and breeding value. My client has suffered significant financial damage due to the loss of this animal, which was being maintained as part of a legitimate business operation. Judge Peterson, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, listened impassively to both sides before addressing Emily directly. Ms. Thompson, I understand you're currently fostering this animal and her offspring. What is your interest in this case? Emily took a deep breath. Your Honor, Shadow and her puppies have become part of our family. My son Noah has formed an extraordinary bond with them, particularly with the runt of the litter who has special needs. Their presence has helped his development in ways I never expected. Separating them now would be devastating, not just for the animals, but for my child. As the hearing progressed, witnesses were called. Dr. Whitfield presented his expert assessment. Sarah provided medical evidence of Shadow's injuries and little ones. Remarkable progress. A surprise testimony came from Jason Miller, the ranch hand who had first discovered Shadow. I've worked with animals all my life, Jason stated plainly, and I know deliberate harm when I see it. That dog wasn't accidentally caught in that fence. Someone put her there, knowing she was pregnant, knowing what would happen. Throughout the proceedings, Shadow remained closely pressed against Emily, her anxiety visibly increasing whenever Dawson spoke or moved. Judge Peterson noticed. Mr. Dawson, she finally said, I'd like to see how the animal responds to you directly. Please approach slowly. What followed was perhaps the most definitive evidence possible. As Dawson approached, Shadow's demeanor changed dramatically. She backed away, a low growl emerging from her throat, her body language communicating unmistakable fear and aversion. Judge Peterson ordered Dawson to return to his seat. I've seen enough, she declared. While Montana law does respect property rights, we also have clear statutes regarding animal welfare. The animal's reaction, combined with the medical evidence and expert testimony, raises serious concerns about Mr. Dawson's treatment of this animal, she continued. I'm ordering a full investigation into Mr. Dawson's animal keeping practices. In the meantime, temporary custody of the German Shepherd known as Shadow and her puppies is granted to Ms. Thompson, pending final determination. Relief washed over Emily so powerfully that she momentarily felt lightheaded. Linda squeezed her arm in congratulation, but the moment was interrupted by Dawson's angry outburst. This is theft, he shouted, rising from his seat. That dog is mine. You can't just... Mr. Dawson, Judge Peterson cut him off sharply. One more word and I'll hold you in contempt. This court has made its ruling. If you have concerns, address them through proper legal channels. As they left the courthouse, Linda was cautiously optimistic. This is a significant victory, though not yet final. The investigation into Dawson will likely uncover more evidence supporting our case. Emily nodded, still processing the emotional whirlwind of the day. What happens next? We wait for the investigation results and the final hearing, which will probably be in about a month. In the meantime, you and Noah can return home safely. The restraining order against Dawson remains in effect. That evening, reunited with Noah and all the dogs at Sarah's cabin, Emily allowed herself to fully experience the day's triumph. As Noah cheerfully played with the puppies on the living room floor, his laughter mingling with excited yips and barks, Emily caught Sarah's eye. I think we might actually win this, she said quietly. Sarah smiled. I never doubted it. Some connections are just meant to be. Later, after Noah had fallen asleep surrounded by his canine companions, Emily sat on the cabin's porch again, Shadow resting her head on Emily's lap. The German Shepherd seemed to sense the shift in circumstances. Her usual vigilance softened by contentment. We're going to be okay, Emily whispered, stroking the dog's ears. All of us. What she couldn't know was that miles away, Frank Dawson sat in his darkened farmhouse, nursing both a bottle and his wounded pride, making plans that would test their newfound security in ways none of them could anticipate. The news came on a brilliantly sunny morning in June, nearly 2 months after Shadow had first been found trapped in that barbed wire fence. Emily was in her kitchen, preparing Noah's breakfast, while the puppies, now robust, energetic creatures, hardly recognizable as the fragile newborns they'd once been, played under Shadow's watchful eye in the fenced backyard. Linda's name flashed on Emily's phone screen, and she answered with the mixture of hope and apprehension that had become familiar during the ongoing legal battle. "Emily, it's over." Linda's voice carried the unmistakable tone of victory. "The sheriff's department completed their investigation of Dawson's property yesterday. What they found was, well, it was enough." "Enough for what?" Emily asked, her heart pounding as she watched Noah through the kitchen window, the little boy giggling as Big and Fast tumbled playfully around him. "Enough to file multiple animal cruelty charges," Linda explained. "They found evidence of systematic neglect and abuse, inadequate shelter, insufficient food and water, several animals with untreated injuries. Based on these findings, Judge Peterson has permanently terminated Dawson's rights to Shadow and her puppies. You're free to adopt them legally." Emily sank into a kitchen chair, overcome by a wave of emotion so powerful she momentarily couldn't speak. "Emily, are you there?" "Yes," she managed finally. "Yes, I'm here. That's wonderful news." "There's more," Linda continued. "Dawson's facing serious legal consequences. He won't be allowed to own animals again, and the investigators found records showing he was running an illegal breeding operation, selling puppies across state. And lines without proper licensing or health clearances. The financial penalties alone will be substantial." After finishing the call, Emily stood in her kitchen, letting the reality sink in. Shadow and her puppies were safe, truly safe. The looming threat that had been shadowing their lives for weeks had finally lifted. She went outside to join Noah, kneeling beside him in the grass. "Guess what, sweetie? Shadow and the puppies are going to stay with us forever now. They're officially part of our family." Noah, with the simple acceptance of a child, nodded as if this was the most natural thing in the world, as if it couldn't possibly have been any other way. That afternoon, Emily took Noah and all 4 dogs to the clinic to share the news with Sarah. The veterinarian's reaction was one of unrestrained joy, hugging Emily tightly before dropping to her knees to greet each of the dogs by name. "I knew it would work out," Sarah said, though the relief in her voice belied her confident words. "They belong with you and Noah." Little one, who had once been so fragile that her survival seemed improbable, now scampered around Sarah's examination room with only a slight wobble in her gait to hint at her earlier challenges. She remained smaller than her brothers, but her bright eyes and alert demeanor showed none of the neurological deficits they had once feared. "I've been meaning to ask," Sarah said, as they watched the puppies play. "Have you given any thought to what you'll do about your teaching situation? The part-time hours must be a concern." Emily nodded, the practical reality of her circumstances returning now that the immediate crisis had passed. "I've been applying for supplemental positions, tutoring, curriculum development, anything that would allow me to keep our home and still have time for Noah and the dogs." Sarah hesitated before speaking again. "I might have a solution to consider. The clinic has been expanding our community outreach programs, including animal-assisted therapy for children with developmental challenges. We've received a grant to fund a part-time coordinator position." Emily looked up sharply. "Are you offering me a job?" "More like suggesting a possibility," Sarah clarified. "Your background in early childhood education, combined with your first-hand experience with Noah and Little One, it's a unique qualification set, and the hours would complement your teaching schedule." The concept was so unexpected, yet so perfectly aligned with the strange journey of the past months, that Emily found herself momentarily speechless, You don't have to decide right away, Sarah added. But I've seen how Noah has flourished with these dogs and how little one has responded to him. It's the kind of connection our therapy program aims to foster. That evening, after Noah was asleep, Emily sat on her porch swing with Shadow beside her, considering Sarah's unexpected proposition. The German Shepherd, now fully recovered from her ordeal, rested her head on Emily's lap with complete trust. "What do you think, girl?" Emily murmured, stroking the dog's sleek head. "Should we try to help other kids and dogs find what you and Noah have?" Shadow's tail thumped against the porch boards in what Emily chose to interpret as approval. The summer passed in a blur of activity. Emily accepted Sarah's offer, and together they developed a structured program that would pair rescued animals with children facing various challenges. Little One, with her gentle temperament and resilience, became their unofficial mascot and demonstration success story. Noah thrived with his canine siblings. His vocabulary expanded rapidly, and his pediatrician noted significant advances in his social and emotional development. The bond between the child and the dogs, especially Little One, continued to deepen in ways that caught the attention of researchers beyond their small Montana community. In late August, as the aspen trees began showing hints of gold, Emily received an unexpected email from Dr. Marcus Whitfield, the animal behaviorist who had testified at their hearing. "I've been invited to present at an international symposium on interspecies bonding in Denver next month," he wrote. "I'd like to include Noah and Little One's case study as a primary example. Would you consider attending with them to participate in a demonstration session?" The symposium transformed their private journey into something larger. Researchers, veterinarians, child development specialists, and animal welfare advocates gathered to discuss the emerging science of human-animal connections in healing contexts. Noah and Little One, unfazed by the attention, demonstrated their remarkable bond for an audience of fascinated professionals. What we're observing here challenges our understanding of interspecies communication, Dr. Eleanor Zhang, a renowned neuroscientist, commented after watching Noah and Little One interact. The synchronization of responses, the mutual attunement, it suggests pathways of connection that our current scientific models don't fully explain. Emily found herself becoming an unexpected advocate, sharing their story with researchers and media outlets. The attention brought awareness and funding to the Big Sky Animal Rescue's new therapy programs, allowing them to expand their reach throughout rural Montana communities. By the time autumn painted the mountains in brilliant colors, Emily had settled into her dual roles as teacher and therapy program coordinator. The financial concerns that had once seemed so insurmountable had resolved, and their household, human and canine members alike, had found a harmonious rhythm. Big and fast, now adolescent dogs with boundless energy had been trained as certified therapy animals themselves, regularly accompanying Emily to schools and pediatric facilities. Shadow, with her calm demeanor and protective nature, had proven especially effective with children who had experienced trauma. And Little One, against all medical expectations, had developed into a uniquely sensitive therapy dog, seemingly able to intuit the specific needs of each child she encountered. Though smaller than her brothers and still showing a slight unsteadiness in her gait, these differences only enhanced her approachability for nervous or hesitant children. In October, almost exactly 6 months after Shadow had been found, Emily received another call from Linda Hawkins. "I wanted you to know that Frank Dawson's case has been resolved," the lawyer informed her. "He's received a suspended sentence conditional on completing community service and animal welfare education. More importantly, he's under a permanent injunction prohibiting him from owning or breeding animals." "That's good news," Emily replied, watching through her kitchen window as Noah played in the yard with all 4 dogs. "I hope he gets the help he needs." There's something else, Linda continued. Part of the settlement requires him to make restitution to animal welfare organizations. A portion will be directed to Big Sky's therapy programs. Emily couldn't help appreciating the poetry of this resolution, that the man who had caused such suffering would now, however unwillingly, contribute to healing. One crisp November afternoon, Emily was reviewing applications for the therapy program when Sarah called. "Turn on Channel 7 News right now," the veterinarian said without preamble. "They're doing a feature on our program." Emily switched on the television just in time to see footage of Noah and little one working with a young girl who had been non-verbal since witnessing a terrible accident. The camera captured the moment the child, after weeks of silence, whispered a word into little one's attentive ear. "The transformation has been remarkable," the news anchor was saying. What began as one child's connection with an injured dog has blossomed into a pioneering program that's changing lives across the state. The report continued, showcasing several children whose participation in the animal therapy sessions had led to breakthroughs in communication, emotional regulation, and social skills. Experts weighed in on the neurobiological mechanisms that might explain these outcomes, while parents testified to changes they had witnessed in their children. "It's not just the children who are healing," Sarah explained on camera. "Many of these animals have survived trauma themselves. There's something powerful in that shared journey of recovery." The segment concluded with a montage of images. Noah reading a picture book to little one. A wheelchair-using child laughing as Big and Fast performed tricks. Shadow gently guiding a blindfolded child through an obstacle course. Emily and Sarah welcoming a new family to the program. From tragedy to triumph, the anchor summarized. A story that reminds us of the extraordinary connections possible between humans and animals and the healing power of unconditional love. After the broadcast, Emily's phone buzzed with messages of congratulation and support. The program's visibility would bring new resources, new participants, new possibilities. That evening, as the first snow of the season began to fall, Emily sat on her living room floor surrounded by her unusual family. Noah was curled against Shadow's side, half asleep, while the three younger dogs sprawled in various comfortable positions nearby. Emily thought about the strange, winding path that had led them here, how a moment of terrible cruelty had eventually flowered into something beautiful and healing, how a wounded animal and a small child had recognized something in each other that transcended words, how that recognition had rippled outward, touching other lives, creating new possibilities. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the landscape in a blanket of white that promised renewal. Inside, in the warm circle of this improbable family, Emily felt a sense of completion, of rightness that she had never expected to find. Noah stirred sleepily against Shadow's flank, his small hand reaching out to rest on little one's head. "Love you," he murmured, words that might have been meant for the dogs, for his mother, or for the entire world that had brought them together. Shadow's eyes met Emily's across the room, alert, intelligent, filled with a depth of understanding that defied simple explanation. In that silent exchange was everything that mattered. Trust regained, wounds healed, love freely given and received. Some bonds, Emily realized, didn't need words to be understood. Some connections were simply meant to be, transcending the barriers of species, experience, and expectation. And sometimes the most profound healing came from the most unexpected sources: a child's innocent touch, an animal's unfettered loyalty, a community's collective compassion. As Noah drifted into sleep, surrounded by the protective circle of his canine family, Emily knew with unshakable certainty that they had all found exactly where they belonged. Together. "Thank you," she whispered to Shadow, to the universe, to whatever constellation of chance and choice had brought them to this moment of perfect belonging. Shadow's tail thumped once against the carpet. Acknowledgement, agreement, affirmation. Outside, the world continued to turn. Inside, a family born of circumstance but bound by love rested in the quiet certainty of connection, a bond beyond words, a story still unfolding, a circle finally complete. Dear listeners, we hope Emily and Noah's journey with Shadow and Little One has touched your heart as deeply as it has touched ours. Some connections truly transcend words, reminding us of the extraordinary healing power found in unexpected relationships. If you've been moved by this tale of resilience and unconditional love, we've created a special playlist featuring similarly heartwarming stories of remarkable bonds between humans and animals. You'll find it by clicking the link to your left. Has a special animal changed your life? We'd love to hear your story in the comments below. And if you'd like to support more content that celebrates these extraordinary connections, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Remember, new stories arrive daily, each one exploring the beautiful complexity of relationships that heal, transform, and inspire. Just like Shadow and Little One found their forever home with Emily and Noah, we hope you'll make our channel your regular destination for stories that remind us of our shared capacity for compassion. Until our next journey together, thank you for listening, for feeling, and for believing in the power of bonds beyond words.